And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Over the weekend, a major gathering of doctors in this country happened, and at which new executives have just been elected. And considering the part that the doctors play, especially in this post-pandemic era, it's just appropriate that we get in their newly elected president for a chat on everything health, but also looking at the doctor in a post-pandemic era. Let's get into it because I anticipate a very interesting conversation ahead. This man is the new president of the Ghana Medical Association. He has been there at the executive level for a long time. He is very familiar to that terrain that he's finally got to become the president of. And he has a list of things in his name in terms of the advocacy as far as that particular sector of the health is concerned. At the helm of the Ghana Medical Association, he pushed for a review of the labor laws, grant 6 months of mandatory leave, maternity leave to them, and a mandatory establishment of nurseries in all public and private institutions as well, has been something that he's championed. One of the things that you learn about Dr. Frank Sribo is that he's not shy in confronting controversy. We'll get into some of the key things that he said over the years. Now, COVID was a big thing for everybody, right? And he had made the point that COVID-19 has come to save people from cholera deaths. Of course, you know the link between that. Before COVID, washing of hands, etc., wasn't such a big deal. Now we know it's become part of our culture. Everywhere you go, you have the Veronica buckets, and he had observed that quite rightly. We'll come to the association and some of the things that they've put together in your communique pretty shortly. But he's spoken of almost everything, from Toilets for All program to what its impact on the society is. He's talked about COVID and its impact on erectile dysfunction, of course. And one of the key things that we found that was interesting as far as his input is concerned, according to him, it's not true that 50,000 plus cases recorded had nothing to do with the political campaign and rallies. And this was key in the heat of the COVID surge that we found just after the elections. Politicians have said, well, it had nothing, the surge that we saw had nothing to do with the rallies. He disagreed. He stood his ground on that and make his view absolutely clear on this. Now, the GMA warned government about the spikes when protocols were being taken for granted. Again, he made that point. And you find that this found its way into many GMA statements post-elections because the doctors really were bearing the brand. Several doctors have died, by the way, and we'll get an update on this as a result of COVID-19. And so he was leading the charge in making the point that politicians should be held responsible for relaxing the protocols as far as that is concerned. The GMA themselves, in their communique over the weekend, had made a few demands. Now, they've expressed grave concern over the non-implementation of aspects of their signed conditions of service document. This is always a big deal. And already the alarm bells are already going off. They're sounding the alarm. They're talking about government should heed to the National Labour Commission's request that was made recently. What are these non-implemented aspects of the signed conditions of service that the GMA is so concerned about? We'll get into that very shortly. Without them, our health sector wouldn't be what it is today. We're going to get into that very shortly with him. And in fact, a host of other things that he touched on include the road traffic situation, which they are appalled by. Galamsey was another key issue. They are talking about they want to see a bit more political commitment in fighting this. And then institutionalization of a health impact assessment. What difference will this make? We're going to be having a conversation about all this, really. And then they made some recommendations when it comes to dealing with the road traffic situation. You know, we have been running the Drive Safe campaign and multimedia for some time. GMA says dualize the major highways, conduct road safety audits into a treatment of hazardous sections, provide rest stops every 80 to 100 kilometers is what they've insisted. Automation of traffic enforcement, take the human element out. But why is the GMA concerned about Galamsey and concerned about road traffic? Because in the end, when the health implications really begin to bite, of course they'll be at the end of making sure that people do not die. It takes a toll. We'll talk about that. But there's some who also have said that the GMA has been a bit soft, and they may be because of, they may change their aggression depending on a particular government in power. Is that a perception or is it reality? Stay with me. Very interesting, fascinating conversation about to ensue with the newly elected president of the Ghana Medical Association here on PM Express. And thank you for staying with us here on PM Express. My guest joining me this evening is the newly elected president of the Ghana Medical Association, a very powerful group indeed. They say when you have all manner of worker unions in Ghana, but when the GMA coughs, government definitely catches the cold. And the man who has been elected the president, I dare say, he has to correct me if I'm wrong, possibly the most radical of the of the leaders you can ever find to rise to the top, because he's been at this for 2 decades plus. He is Dr. Frank Serbo, and he's my guest in the studio. Doc, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Evans, for having me.
2001, you've been doing this for more than 2 decades at the leadership level of the GMA.
Precisely.
Okay.
Started as a junior doctors leader, served for 3 years. I think I was the longest serving junior doctors leader.
Okay.
And
junior doctors are Kolebu?
Konfanoche.
Konfanoche, okay.
But I served twice as the national head of the junior doctors because I was on the council of GMA then, as representing the junior doctors. So after that, I became the assistant general secretary of the GMA, a position I also held for 2 terms, and that was for 4 years. Moved on to become the general secretary for 3 terms, 6 years, that is it. And then until some few days ago, I was the vice president, a position I also held for another 2 terms, and that is also another 4 years. So if you put it together, basically almost 20 years in the service of GMA, in the service of doctors, yes.
You're a doctor yourself?
Yes, I am.
And I'm very curious, do you also practice?
I do.
You're a biomedic?
I am a pediatrician.
A pediatrician?
A very good one at that.
Okay. I mean, so here you are, having acquired the skills to be in the theater, but then you decide to lead a group.
Yeah.
What influenced that decision?
The dynamics was quite interesting. In fact, to be frank with you, the first time I got into leadership, the meeting that made me the head of the junior doctors, I wasn't present.
People just elected
I was actually elected in my absence.
What did they see in you?
Because I had majority of my classmates at that time at the meeting, and they wanted somebody who they could trust, somebody they could fall on to when they are in trouble. So when they actually impeached the leadership then, and they decided they needed somebody who can sort them out at that time. And before I realized, I was in my humble, small flat when I got the message that I have been elected as the junior doctors leader in my absence. And
so you wanted somebody who can fight for them?
I guess so.
You've always been a fighter?
Not really. I mean, I have always been tenacious in everything I do, and I dedicate myself to it. And
you're going to dig into a bit of your past, because when it comes to GMA leadership, you're as controversial as it gets. We'll get into the facts. The facts will tell a story. But let's start with some of the key issues as far as the medical association is concerned. Let's start with COVID, because as you say, we're looking at the doctor in a post-pandemic era. A lot has changed for your profession. How many doctors have so far succumbed to COVID?
Luckily for us, I don't even know whether we are post-pandemic or we are, but I think we are still in the pandemic.
Yeah, we are.
Yes, and so luckily for us, so far we are still standing at 9 doctors that have fallen to COVID.
So far?
But yes, but unfortunately, it took some of the best brains that we had in our midst. And they didn't touch only the public sector, even those in private sector were also touched. And I'm sure everybody remembers our good old professor, Planjuru, the rector of the Ghana College then, a very brilliant physician. And COVID took him away. So it touched us, and I'm sure we learned a lot of lessons from that. And even though we've had some few near misses, very close shave ones for that matter, they have been able to pull through. So, and our management of COVID since then actually also improved. When we realized our colleagues were falling, there was the need for us to do something extra. And so it also impacted not only on the doctors that got COVID, but actually Ghanaians who fell critically ill, and we managed to save a lot of them. So I think that we've paid the ultimate price because some of our best brains actually fell to COVID.
And nine of them, even if one life, it's one life too many. So on the back of that, on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate our handling of COVID so far?
I think we did well initially, very, very well. If you remember the famous fellow Ghanaians that the president used to give us updates, and it reminded Ghanaians almost every now and then that there was a need for us to observe all the protocols. Yeah. And it was quite good. I think other countries were amazed at how we handled our COVID situation. But as always, politicians at a point in time will cave in, especially when it comes to political activities. And I think that is when we lost the plot. However, we had a few surges since then, up and down, and then now we are more or less declining. We are in the declining phase. But I would say that we did quite well, even though there were some negatives, and especially so because of some political activities. Yeah. And I'm sure you remember GMA didn't hold back. We actually pointed it out to the politicians that what they are doing is not helpful, because it's the reason why some people would throw away the protocols, because they were thinking that we were out of the woods. And after that, then another big blow was when Sir John's funeral was held, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Yes, and all the protocols were again thrown away, and then we realized that there was massive gathering of individuals and people, and at that time the situation was not too good, and yet all the protocols were also thrown out. But averagely, I would say that Ghana did.
Okay, so 0 to 10, what will you put
I
us?
think that I'll put us at 6.
6? Yes. Okay, so just at the average, average mark.
Yes.
Okay. What has been for you? So one of the key things that was announced was packages for yourself and your colleagues.
Yes, yes.
Has government been faithful in implementing those incentive packages?
I think it's half-half. I mean, half-half because if you remember, just before the election, some tax waivers were granted to health workers.
Yes.
That was actually given. And then there was this issue of 50% reward for people in the front line. That became a very controversial issue. And the definition for who was even a frontline health worker became very difficult for us to be able to define. Before we realized very few people have been selected. However, we all know that every single health worker, right from the health center to the tertiary or quaternary center, was at risk. So some of these few people were paid, others were not paid. And the issue of insurance for people who were infected with COVID is still outstanding. I am very sure that
your insurance, those who were, as in health workers infected with COVID, they still haven't been paid the insurance that was promised.
Paid their insurance that was promised. So that is also still outstanding.
Is that the only one that is outstanding in terms of the host of promises that were made? The tax incentive was taken care of?
The tax incentive was taken care of.
I think your income, they also gave you some incentives on your...
our income? No, there was no incentive.
You're not supposed to pay taxes on some of the monies that you made. Government reduced.
No. We were given a flat tax waiver, more or less. The income tax that we were supposed to be paying on our salaries was actually frozen or taken off.
True.
So that brought us some money.
But that's your income.
That's what I'm saying. So that brought us some money. And that for me was good. We all enjoyed it. It was getting close to the Christmas period. But I also think that the president also enjoyed from it, because I'm sure most health workers also voted for him because they were getting these tax waivers. So on that or a lighter note, but I'm sure he also had some leverage as far as that was concerned. And there is quite a sizable number of health workers. It wasn't only doctors that you would say we are just about 7,000-8,000 doctors in this country. However, if you take the nurses and other health workers, the numbers were quite huge and massive. So if per that incentive alone, I'm sure he got a lot of people voting for him. However, there were other promises that were made, and that is why I touched on the issue of the 50% salary incentive that was supposed to be given to frontline health workers. That did come to a few people and not everybody. And then the issue of the insurance. There's been back and forth with the Ministry of Health to try and make sure that, because it was something that was announced, and we all know that the government came clear and told us that they have actually bought some kind of insurance for every single health worker who gets infected on the job, so that you can at least be reliant on the fact that even if you die, there is something that you can, your family can rely on. So I know that there are colleagues who have died, and even after today, I'm not sure their families have received any insurance package from anywhere. So, and people, a lot of them who were infected have also not received any health.
Were you infected yourself?
Luckily, no. I would say that I wasn't infected, even though it was always a close shave. There were several patients I came into contact with who turned out to be positive and tested positive for COVID. There are times that maybe some of us were even infected without knowing. Because if you don't have symptoms, you are very unlikely to go and check, and so you may not even know. But I must say that I traveled to the United States recently, and one of my tests actually turned to be positive. So, but I repeated the tests the next day, and I got a negative result. So I don't know whether that was just a false positive, yeah, or not. But
so for your members in the health sector generally who are having still benefited from the insurance, I haven't heard any push from your end demanding that should be, that promise must be kept.
We have been pushing at the level of the ministry. There have been several communications.
What are they telling you?
So many letters. I think they also have a challenge with the way the whole thing was arranged. I'm sure there's some things were not done properly at the level of the ministry. And so
the president promised it over and over again.
The promises, yes, it was done. But I believe that it is something that we have not let go. We are going to push. Our attention is on some few things now. Definitely we'll turn to that as well, and we will be pushing to get this insurance package sorted out.
Is the Ghanaian health worker, and let's talk about COVID here, better off now than he was, say, a decade ago when you were, still in the leadership before you became president? If you look at your circumstance today.
In terms of?
In terms of, say, condition. We'll come to conditional service because that's a major thing for you. In terms of conditions of service, in terms of the environment in which we work, improvement in health infrastructure, all the 9 yards. Is the Ghanaian worker better off today?
I would say that it's a checkered kind of issue. If you pick, for example, where I work currently, which is Bekwai Municipal Hospital, there is a new hospital that has been built, and it's a very beautiful hospital with a lot of equipment, and the environment alone more or less encourages you to give up your best. Okay. There are still other hospitals that are down there which you wouldn't want to work in there. Recently, the Wa Regional Hospital was also completed. Even operating it fully is even a challenge. And I'm sure those who are also working there are really fine with the atmosphere in which they are working. Tepa Hospital came on board not long ago, and you could also see that, yes, people are happy working in the new environment and then all the equipment that come with it. Yeah. But we still have a lot more facilities that are very deprived. And people or doctors and nurses who are working there are facing quite a lot of challenges. So you cannot definitely say that all of us are enjoying that same kind of atmosphere in where we work, because people still have to improvise a lot and do things that ideally, given the right circumstances, they wouldn't be doing what they are doing, but that is what they have to do to save lives. In terms of our pockets, definitely since the inception of I'm sure remember the condition of service that we fought for somewhere in 2015, 2016, it was that hectic. It improved a little bit. We have renegotiated, and that has also added some few coins to us, but we still believe that the doctor is not well taken care of. I'll tell you a startling fact. When I started work, when I felt that at that time on top of my game as a doctor, if you converted my salary, I could be earning about $2,000.
When you started?
Yes. Then.
How long ago was this?
That was just about 20 years ago.
21 years ago, earning $2,000. That's a lot of money.
That was a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes.
But now,
even today's $2,000.
But now, if you should convert, you realize that most doctors fall below the $2,000 mark. Most doctors, you probably find only the senior most doctors falling above the $2,000 mark, simply because inflation has taken away everything. And so that is one of the reasons why you basically see doctors fighting almost every single day. Because the things that you could afford then, even though with the amount of money you are seeing now in your pocket, you can't afford the same things that you could afford then. So as much as...
what is the average salary of a doctor?
The average salary of a doctor now is just about, I think it's less than $1,000.
You're not serious, are you?
I'm not joking.
Less than $1,000?
Yes, because the dollar is averaging 6 point something, right?
So you're talking about 6,000,
yes,
just below 7,000.
Precisely, and a lot of doctors don't make 7,000 cedis. They don't.
In Ghana?
In Ghana, yes.
A medical doctor fully qualified and practicing?
I am telling you.
So of how many years? I mean, are you talking about fresh entry level?
No, but a medical officer, even of a 3-year-old or 3 years, should be able to earn more than that, isn't it? And so, and you have medical officers who have worked for 4 years, 5 years, and they can earn $1,000. And so if you have to travel, and that is one of the key reasons why when people see us
doctors in Ghana, on average, are earning less than $1,000 a month.
Precisely.
This is net or gross?
That is then that is the take home.
That's the take home.
That's the take home. Yes.
So that's
the take home. That's the take home. But the gross doesn't matter. The gross, a little bit of it goes into your pension. That is if you are lucky to grow to even go on retirement, and you are lucky to be able to get...
How many years are doctors in school before they graduate?
You do 6 years in the university, and then after that, if you have to specialize, almost another 6 years or so. So
12 years.
Averagely 12 years, 10 years.
And then of course you have to do your
precisely.
How many years you do the
internship and all that? Yes, the internship is 2 years. So once you do the internship, and before you are even allowed to go and specialize, you should have practiced for at least 3 years.
So take specialization out. You're at least talking about 8 years.
Precisely.
Before you
even think of the next step.
So you say that you do this 8 years and you come out and earn less than $1,000 in Ghana.
You see how surprised you are, because everybody puts us up there, and that is the reason why when doctors start screaming, people say that they are greedy, but we are not. We are not. And the truth of the matter is that it's quite hectic. We usually don't put out the figures. I'm sure that today a lot of your listeners will begin to revise their notes and realize that the doctor is not...
But why is the doctor so poorly paid then?
Well, you should be asking the employer. You should be asking the employer.
But I mean,
the doctor is so poorly paid. You should be asking the employer. Because the point is that before somebody pays you, there is a value that the individual places on your head. Even though we know that we are supposed to be valued up there. But if you look at it, generally salaries in this country are low.
But you always think that the medical profession seem to have... They play in a different league. But we are on the single spine. A place that we don't belong, we don't fit in there. Because the single spine is based on a certain policy, which is referred to as equal work for equal pay. And indeed, it doesn't matter where you are. Once your work is rated as the same, you are paid the same. And so you may get some allowances in addition to what you are getting. And that is even what is pushing you up there. And if you look at the single spine, the level is up to, I think, level 24 or so, or level 25, which only the Director General is supposed to be at that level of 25 each. And the rest of us, regardless of what you do, you can't go above that. And the spine is ended. And so if you need to make anything else, it has to be allowances, which most of the time are not even pensionable. Okay, so now you brought the thing, but you earn a lot of allowances, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm putting all the allowances together. This is not.
All the $1,000 is plus all your allowances.
Yes. So I'm putting all the allowances together. I've been very generous. I'm trying to tell you exactly as it is, plus all the allowances. The average doctor gets less than $1,000 in this country.
So you're saying, I'm just trying to understand. So the official explanation is because you're on the single spine, and so that is what governs you.
Because the highest you can get on the single spine, where can you go to? Maybe some max 4,000 maximum. Okay, and then maybe you get some 2,000 or
4,000 maximum on the single spine.
On the single spine, that's probably where you can go as a doctor for the average doctor, and then at the end of the day, what happens to you? The rest comes in the form of allowances, and then takes you close to maybe the $1,000, but you don't even cross the $1,000 mark. So that's what happens.
But that's the private sector is different, right? For a doctor, you'd earn far more in working in a private hospital, a private health facility than this is those on the government payroll working in the government.
Yes, for the private sector, I mean, more or less, it's a business. So once it's a business, their salaries are not directly linked to that of the government payroll. And of course, if you are even the operator of a private facility, you look at how much you are making and decide which kind of payroll you would like to put yourself on. And then that is even if you are properly organized. And I believe that is what should happen, because if regardless of whether you own the facility or not, you should put yourself on salary so that clearly you know how much you are getting in a month, and then how much you are contributing to your social security, and etc. So in that arena, you can make more money. But the point is that how many doctors are able to go into private practice. And remember, it's not everywhere in this country that if you should decide to go into private practice, you are going to get people patronizing your services.
I mean, that's when you own a facility, but I'm talking about established private facilities that a lot of the doctors in public service also double as
that is
consultants.
Moonlighting.
Yes.
Like locums.
Locums, yes.
Oh, locums are usually negotiated. Sometimes it depends on how many hours you can do. Some decide to have you run a clinic for them, and they pay you according to the number of patients you attend to. So, which will be basically like a percentage of whatever you bring in as part of. And some depend on the charges that you yourself may have been able to negotiate. So that is not a straight jacket, something that you can.
But you make a lot more money doing that.
No, a lot. Some people make some money by doing that. Yes, but the avenues for that is also limited.
Why is that limited? There's so many private hospitals.
Because you are looking at only Accra and Kumasi. That is what you are looking at. Okay. You remember that those of us in Bekwai and other places, there is no private facility to go for you to go and even practice a locum or whatever. Okay, and even Accra and Kumasi, those private facilities are choked. People get in there and they won't, because it gives them some extra income. You think they will leave it for another incoming doctor, a new doctor, to come and take up those kind of avenues? No. So gradually, even in Accra and Kumasi, you realize that the up and coming doctors do not get opportunities to apply their trade for the private practice areas as far as locums are concerned. Unless you are lucky and you have a mentor who decided, okay, I have done this for quite a long time, come in, support me, and then ultimately I'll leave the place for you to also be visiting and make some money. If you go beyond Accra and Kumasi, there are no several areas, there are no facilities for you to be able to go and do locums. And that is the reason why we have been advocating, for example, that there should be some deprived area incentives. Yeah. So that doctors and other health workers who accept postings to go and work in the deprived areas, and they need to make sure that at least something extra is given to them, because they don't have this opportunity to be able to do locums. And two, even schools where their children will have to attend, it's a problem, because if you want to go into that same deprived area and let your children school while somebody's children, your colleagues' children are in better schools in Kumasi and Accra, definitely you realize that you wouldn't have done them a great service. And so it's important that kind of balancing act comes in. In
the midst of the picture you've painted of how poorly paid the Ghanaian doctor is, how motivated is a Ghanaian doctor then to give up his best in very trying, apart from the fact that the pay is poor, a lot of the environment is also pretty trying. How motivated are they? Because you hear a lot of concerns from everybody a lot of people who access and say they're not getting the sort of love from the doctors and nurses, etc.
That they should be getting.
That they should be getting.
I think that that is one of the key issues that happen. And most of the time, the frustration creeps in, even though we try as much as possible to let doctors understand that their core job is to save lives. they are supposed to abide by the Hippocratic Oath and ensure that they give up their best under trying circumstances, which I can tell you that a lot of the doctors are doing. A lot of doctors, regardless of the challenges we have, we do ply our trade with joy. In actual fact, the most joyous moment of every doctor is to be able to snatch a patient from the jaws of death. Once you do that, you go home feeling very proud. And we are happy when we do that. Sometimes the monetary aspect of it is important, but to be frank with you, our job, the outcome of our job is what satisfies us. And it is quite frustrating when, for example, you are not getting the right accoutrements to work with, when you know that you could have done something. There are doctors that that weep when they lose patients, even though we don't weep in the presence of people for people to know that, oh, the doctor is done, but we do cry. And there are times we ask questions, why we couldn't do this, why we couldn't save this patient. It becomes frustrating. The success stories and the nice doctors, they are bound. But unfortunately, it is only when we misbehave, and that is when your people pick it up. And of course, that is when patients also tend to come in. And then, but a lot of the doctors are giving up their best, and I salute them. I think that we are doing a fantastic job. Regardless of our problems, we will continue to hammer home the need for our welfare to be taken seriously.
Talking about welfare, in your communique, you say that there are the aspects of your signed conditions of service document that are not being implemented. Which aspects are these?
We had a litany of dates, but I must say that the government has done a lot. They've been able to solve a lot of the issues, and critically now outstanding are 2 issues. And the 2 issues that are critically outstanding now is part of the condition of service that indicate that the topmost doctors, which we refer to them as category B doctors, where in every system you equate them to the level of directors, and since not everybody can become a director in an institution, are supposed to get some kind of official vehicles. These are not vehicles that are given to them or dashed to them to take home when they retire, but give them some vehicles so that they can use it to practice their trade. And then once they retire, depending on the arrangement that you have with us, you can either take back your cars or decide to sell to them on some kind of a discounted basis. That aspect is still outstanding. We were supposed to see the first batch of vehicles delivered by the end of this year, and the processes for the procurement of the vehicles by now should have been clear. And we are talking about just about 600 or so in number total.
Did you get one?
I qualified to get one, but the point is that I don't know whether it's coming or not, and that is one of the aspects that we are talking about. And the numbers are not huge, so what we asking for is just about 300 of these vehicles, probably coming in this year and then next year. But the processes, we are not seeing how it's ending, and we are already in the month of November, and so that is one of the outstanding issues that we feel should be dealt with. Interestingly, what is going on is that it appears that these aspects of our condition of service was not budgeted for. And that is quite interesting.
Was not budgeted for?
Yes, for government to sign agreements that and does not budget for.
When did you sign this agreement?
This was somewhere in 2019.
Okay, so you had at least 2 budgets.
Yes, and
right,
so
2019,
now,
2020, 2020,
by
2021.
Exactly. By now, there should have been clear budget lines if government was committed in.
You have another budget coming next week.
But that is not our interest. Our interest is that by the end of the year, we should be getting half of those vehicles delivered.
You have warned that you want to avoid an industrial action. But this is not something you're going to go on strike for.
No, we don't know. I mean, the point is that we are at Labour Commission. The good thing is that Labour Commission has been
Who took it? That they called you?
If you remember, about 2 months ago, 3
Yes.
months, the GMA issued a communique.
A very strongly worded statement.
Strong worded
Yes,
statement threatening a strike action. That is when Labour Commission stepped in. And I must salute them for the good work that they have done so far. They have steered the meetings and ensured that at least some level of implementation has been done. I must say a large chunk of it. But the key outstanding issues are this one. And then, of course, there was some aspect of the condition of service that touches on some allowance that is supposed to be given to doctors at the end of the year. And we are talking about 2020 is still outstanding.
For what exactly? What are we giving allowance for?
It's more or less like a motivational allowance.
Okay.
And I'm sure Everybody.
All workers, all doctors.
For doctors.
All doctors.
Precisely, all doctors. And they were supposed to be originally be paid from the facility level. So the facilities were supposed to be able to pay these to the doctors. But the facilities have indicated to government that they are unable to pay because they are not fluid enough in terms of their finances, and that they are asking the government to step in and at least clear the first one, which is the one for 2020. We are not even talking about the one for 2021 yet. So the 2020 own is still outstanding, and we are already ending 2021. So that even becomes a double jeopardy or double slap, because then it means that the store 2020 is outstanding and 2021 comes.
You expect you expect the 2021 paid and then the 2021 paid first, and then the 2021 obviously follows.
Precisely.
How huge is this? Is this a percentage of your salary?
It is actually our basic salary. And like I indicated to you, it's not huge. If you are just going to...
So they're just giving you...
This is not even plus
1 month of your basic salary?
1 month of our basic salary. And this is minus the allowances.
Okay.
This minus the allowances. So it's not that huge. It's not like...
It's a one-time payment.
It's a one-time payment.
Which is what you find in a private organization. They call it the 13th month salary.
Precisely. It's the same name that we have for a 13th month salary. And it happens only once in a year. And yet it's not happened. So the start of 2020 has not happened, and 2021 is going to an end, and we are not, 2021 is almost ending. We are not seeing any headway with that. And it's not like it's any special money that I would say it's minus allowances and everything. It's just the basic. And the basic, like I indicated to you on the single spine, is just not too huge. It's just...
Let me put it, these material things are not worth striking over, is there?
Well, I mean, you see, the point is, you remember, you raised the issue of motivation.
Yes.
These are some of the little things that demotivate people, especially knowing very well that, look, you have agreed with me that you give me this at the end of the year. You might as well have decided that you wouldn't agree. Then I know I have nothing to look forward to. But once you agree, the good thing is that see to its implementation. It motivates people. It may not be much, because of course, like you said, there are material things, but that is also the reason why we work. Because without the salaries and the material things, I'm sure this evening you'll be at home probably doing something else with your
I
time.
just enjoy talking to you.
Maybe. We could have been talking in the pub.
So if you don't get it by the timelines you set, what happens?
In actual fact, these timelines were not set by the GMA. The current timelines that we are talking about was set by the Labour Commission. Because the Labour
You're
Commission...
asking them to heed to that request.
The Labour Commission, in its last letter to the government, which was just on the 20... just about a week ago, indicated that they are giving the government 1 month to...
So that's the end of November?
Yes, to cease with the full implementation of the conditional service. Because I'm sure Labour Commission have realized that the doctors have been magnanimous enough. We have followed through with all the meetings, and we have basically worked with government to agree even whatever timetable that they have brought forward. We have accepted it, and we have worked with it. So Labour Commission have realized that there was a need for them to now rather put pressure.
So Labour Commission has issued that 1 month ultimatum to government, not you.
Not us.
This is quite refreshing, because normally it's the doctors who issue the ultimatum. So end of month comes and you still don't have it. What happens?
That is where the GMA would then decide on what we would also do, because then it's clear Labour Commission has not been able to secure what they have promised to be able to secure from government. And the good thing is that when that happens, I'm sure you are in this country, the least... every now and then, Labour Commission will come in and declare somebody's action as illegal and that they have not gone through
You can't go on strike. You can't, because you're an essential service.
Yeah, well, that is... essential services are supposed to be treated as essential services. You should remember that. And that is the point. Once you label me as essential services, then everything about me should be essential service.
You don't think you're being treated as
essential service? But even with the essential service tag, there are provisions in the Labour Commission, the Labour laws, that allow you to go on strike once those...
You've satisfied those conditions,
satisfied. Yes. And I believe that the GMA has basically already satisfied those conditions.
Satisfied the conditions
already
for an industrial action?
For all of it already. We have satisfied every single of it. And now we are even talking about an ultimatum that has been given to government by Labor Commission.
Is government cooperating in these talks at Labor Commission?
Oh yes, I think they are. I think they have done a fantastic job, and and that is the reason why we have been hesitant in pushing for a strike action, even and respecting the Labor Commission to also go through the process with us, because they have also been forthcoming, and I believe that that is what we want. We want the employer to engage us, even on this matter that we are discussing, the matter of these vehicles, and then of course the 13-month salary. We are of the opinion that if government is struggling in certain areas, they should come to us. We should sit, have a chat, see the way forward. Maybe we will suggest an alternative thing for them, and maybe we'll sign some memorandum of understanding that may cover some of those aspects. And I must say the Labour Ministry and then the Ministry of Health, they have done well so far, but we are not still satisfied, because we feel that these two are very critical to our members, and it's important we get it resolved.
You are on record to have expressed a view that talking about treating of the doctors, etc. You spread that the politicians sometimes raise themselves above everybody else in terms of compensation and others. In fact, you recently on the Busia FM said on the issue about ex gratia.
Yes.
You said, quote, "It is so pathetic and disheartening that public servants go home with slim pension allowance after serving the country for about 35 and 40 years, while an MP and other government appointees will take home huge allowance every 4 years for serving the same country." And this is the part that struck me. My opinion is the government should stop giving public servants pension pay and give us ex gratia every 4 years. Public Workers Union should come together and push this agenda, because we have been taken for granted for so many years. Question, were you just being populist when you said this, or you genuinely believe that public servants, including doctors, deserve ex gratia every 4 years?
It's something I believe in. I mean, a lot of my MP friends were not very happy with me when I said this. I had a lot of calls, and a lot of them were trying to explain to me the reason why they get ex gratia and that their job is not permanent. And a lot of reasons were actually abused to the reason why they get ex gratia. But we are in this country. Some have been there for 16 years, isn't it? And so every 4 years, if you are going to take ex gratia, and I have been in this service for more than since 2001. That is
21 years.
Yes. And I have never received any ex gratia.
20 years, yes.
Can you imagine that 20 years of no ex gratia? I meant it. And I feel that it's important that it's a national cake that we are sharing, isn't it? So if we are sharing it, there should be some degree of equity. I'm not calling for equality, but equity. So when I say equity, it means that if every 4 years, government find it prudent to give some group of people ex gratia, why can't you give the same to public sector workers? And I'm sure you are in this country, it won't has this collapsed the economy?
But the huge numbers involved in public sector workers ex gratia, and the economy can take.
And that has always been the challenge. Every time you demand something that you think legitimately you should be given, then you are giving the destiny that it will collapse the economy. Then the best thing to do is that let's stop that practice altogether. Then let us all, I'm sure before MPs go into parliament, they were already working. They were contributing to social security. Let them continue to contribute to the same social security. And then when they retire, they also come back and take the same meager pensions that we all take. I mean, so it's only fair. This is fairness, because the point is that when we elevate you people to a certain level, and you don't treat others with equity. I am not asking for equality. It's possible that your ex gratia may be bigger than mine, but at least I know that at the end of 4 years I'll get something. That is.
But when you retire, you get something.
Oh, we have had doctors who have retired in this country. But their retirement pay is less than 500 cedis.
Well, the ex gratia is fundamentally a creation of the Constitution. Article 71 creates that for them.
Who created the Constitution? Human beings.
Well, two of us did. And the
human beings. So it can be amended. Can't it? Can we amend it? It can. That is the reason why we all make contributions to ensure that we can make amendments and see to it that people are also taking.
So your point is, give every public sector worker the same as gratia or scrap it for
precisely
for the politician?
Yes, I'm sure the politician will not be very happy with me when I say this, and I think it's legitimate.
What about your colleague doctors? They agree with you?
Oh yeah, they do. Of course, the doctors are sacrificing so much, and it's not only COVID, but if I tell you that there are several other infections out there, so many of them, that we contract on the job and the risk we face on daily basis. Look, there are, tuberculosis.
Yes.
Evans, I can tell you that a lot of doctors who work in these respiratory or chest clinics and so forth, most of them pick up tuberculosis and they have to go on treatment. So, and it's not like they pick it from anywhere on the job, okay? And it's not only doctors, the other health workers. So if we are in that risky job and we get ex gratia, I mean, it will be fair, isn't it? I'm sure you will support that yourself.
Well, it's a suggestion. I'm going to take a break. When I return, the World Bank last year did a survey and puts the doctor-to-patient ratio at 1,000 patients to one doctor. In the midst of all the challenges that the president of the GMA had just outlined, do we still have doctors leaving the shores of this country in droves as it used to be in the famous brain drain saga, just to leave the shores and get greener pastures elsewhere? And how do you bridge that doctor-patient ratio? And then we'll get a bit into his own personal leadership style. I'm going to get into a bit of history with him because he has a long history with the GMA. I'll go to 2015, where arguably GMA's biggest fight with government ensued, and he was leading the charge then. Some heated exchange. People called him political. They even called him MPP. So what does he bring now? Is it going to change now, or is it going to be the same Frank Strebor that we've known with the GMA? Stay with me. My guest in the studio is still the newly elected president of the Ghana Medical Association. Very interesting thoughts on all issues relating to the health sector. A few quick things. The World Bank last year said that they did an assessment of the patient-doctor ratio. We're still at 1,000 to 1. Is that what it is in 2021, or has it improved?
Well, it's still like that
still around
for other catchment areas of Ghana. So.
And we're far from what the ideal should be.
Precisely.
Why is that? Are we not training enough, or we're training but they're leaving?
I think now that we are training a lot of doctors, and so the numbers are catching up. However, we still have a lot more doctors also leaving. And
for greener pastures.
For greener pastures. But the key factor that has even contributed to our numbers increasing is because a lot more doctors are being trained and some are also being retained. Previously, what was happening was that a lot of doctors would travel initially not because they were going to seek greener pastures, but to go and seek for further training and knowledge. And when they get out there, they get to know that, this place is sweeter than home. So then they end up staying.
Okay, and then $15,000 a month. Why should I earn $1,000?
So then they end up staying. So with the
Have
advent
you ever
of
been tempted?
Yes, initially I was tempted. In fact, my dad of blessed memory was the one who stopped me from moving. Okay, because I'm sure he had struggled to produce one doctor, and then suddenly you get up one day and you say you want to leave, and he was like, so should I go back and queue when I go to the hospital? After all these years that I have struggled and to take you through medical school, and I think that actually touched me. And
you stayed?
We were a class of 49. I cannot tell you that those of us in Ghana now are less than 9.
Wow.
Yes.
40 of them have left.
40 of them have left, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so...
Let me ask you then, Beb, as we wrap up. I mean, in terms of government policy in this area, health, one of the biggest government policies going forward has been the Agenda 111 to build, hospitals across the country. What's your take on that? I mean, it was promised that it was supposed to start last year. It didn't start. It's been promised again that it probably will start this year. How much faith do you have in that political promise actually becoming reality?
I will not even say the faith I have in it. My first comment would be that it is something that has to happen. We want it to happen. We need it. I have experienced a new hospital, and I know how it impacts, yes, on health.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something that should happen. And along with it should be the human resource training that we need to be able to man these areas. And so as they are thinking of building these hospitals, they should also be thinking of how they are going to resource these hospitals with the necessary human resource. And so there is a need for us to even start planning now, start thinking of training more doctors in various specialties to be able to man these places. So otherwise, like I indicated to you, one hospital is operational, but it's not every single part of the hospital that is operating. So you can build these fantastic edifices and yet you won't have the human resource to man them. So let us go along with the human resource, but it's something we need as a country. And let us also think of, as part of this Agenda 111, some of them should be converted into children's hospital. In this country, we don't really have any proper design and designated children's hospital. It's all like a wink.
Yeah. And this is your field.
This is my field. And I think it's one of the most deprived areas in Ghana. Our attention as far as children are concerned is something that is off grade.
Let me ask you this finally before we go. I started by saying you're very controversial and you don't shy away from controversy. In 2015, you were the General Secretary then, led the GMA longest, possibly the most bitter, drawn-out strike of all time you can find. It gained international attention, people died, etc., because you're fighting for conditions to serve, etc., with government. You got into tussle. In fact, you actually at one point said doctors will have to resign en masse if government were not. So people accuse you of being political because of the government of the day. Is that approach going to be the same this year, or you've changed from then, or you've learned lessons and regretted a bit of?
Well, the truth of the matter is that I have never been political. My only political party is Ghana Medical Association. That is the only political party I belong to. And I have always said that you can only be reading when your back is bent. And I am sure people have not followed me enough. They will realize that during the era of President Kufuor, I was accused of being NDC. And then NDC comes to power and I was accused of being MPP. The point is that once there is something we need to talk about, regardless of the government in power, and it's about doctors' welfare, I will do so with everything I've gotten. But the issue of all these things happening in 2015 was an era, was a time, it was a point that I don't regret any of it. I think that was what we were supposed to do at the time. And as president of Ghana Medical Association, I intend to serve my people. I will do what is necessary. It's not like I'm going to be abrasive unnecessarily. But the point is that there are times that you have to show strong leadership. And if you remember, at that time, the airwaves was poisoned against doctors. Then there was the need for somebody to step up and take the mantle and fall for the doctors. And I did so. And I think that was one of the key reasons why I'm sitting here with you today.
As a president
yes,
of the GMA.
Because then the doctors realized that this is somebody they can trust. And that is why I'm here. But I mean, I have decided that this time around, we will be looking at other areas. We'll be looking at how best we can also give back to society. And I have campaigned on the fact that we need to. And I'll use your platform to advocate that if there are any stakeholders who want to support us in our quest to provide incubators for our babies, phototherapy machines for our children who have neonatal jaundice, and even theater beds in some of these critically deprived areas that need theater beds, they should come on board, support us, and let us deliver.
Dr. Frank Serbo, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for joining us on PMS.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.